All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the penultimate session 5 of our regional referee development sessions. To start us off, I will just do a acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Waterpolo New South Wales acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Well, we are looking after penalty fouls today. I hope everyone's had a skim through the rules, so we're all across it. We'll be going through the rules, a couple of diagrams. We'll do some videos at the end, and then we'll go through questions as well. What I will do as well is any quirky things or like those really rare scenarios that you might have come across, keep them to yourself, and I'm going to put out a call for next week for you to flick through the scenario, because next week is all about doing a bit of a summary and going through those 1%ers and going through those quirky, unique situations and how to deal with them. So we'll go through that. We'll go through that next week. So we'll go from there. So I'm just going to share my screen so that we can get going, and I'm going to hand the floor over to Andrew.
Oh, but you're the boss. You can do it.
No.
Still losing that argument. Anyway.
Yeah.
Penalty fouls. The enjoyment and the bane of our existence. If we thought getting exclusions was right, here we go with this one. Thank you. So what is a penalty foul? I'm sure we all know, and I'm just stating the obvious, but there's a penalty foul is a foul that is committed within the 6-meter area where a goal probably would have resulted. And it's probably, not will have, may have, probably. Now, as a goalkeeper, I'd never give a penalty if I could, because no one was going to score anyway, but that's life. It shall be a penalty foul to commit any of the following offences, which shall be punished by the award of a penalty throw to the opposing team. The referee will indicate that a penalty throw has been awarded by blowing the whistle and raising the arm with 5 fingers. We need to make these signals clear as well. As of the 1st of January 2023, the referee must delay the call of a penalty until the shot or attempted shot is completed. In such case, the referee may raise his or her arm, indicating a possible penalty. That was a new one that was brought in this year, where we could finally extend the advantage range to cover penalties, because we want natural goals if we can. And I'm sure you're going to struggle with this one, but that's okay. We all have been. So we'll get into it. Generally, the 10.1 just covers about what we do and why we do it. 10.3.
Okay.
Yeah. 10.3, for an excluded player intentionally interfere with play, including affecting the alignment of the goal. If the excluded player does not commence leaving the field of play almost immediately, the referee may deem this to be an intentional interference under this rule. This happens a lot. Players stuff around. They don't hear the call. They're not looking at the referee for the number, that sort of thing. Generally, if the signal's clear and you're holding up the number, they need to know, okay, and they need to get out. Generally, the coach will yell at them and all that sort of stuff as well. There's no set time frame to allow for that. When you say, oh, it's 5 seconds, they must go, you just know if they're in the water and they're making no attempt. You know, they're probably sitting there. As soon as they put their arm up to defend, though, again, they definitely give a penalty against them. Now, we've got 3 on the same slide. 10.2, for a goalkeeper or defending player to commit any foul within the 6-meter area for goal would probably have resulted. For a goalkeeper or defending player to pull over, pull down, or otherwise displace the goal, as you can see by the picture. And within the 6-meter area for a goalkeeper or defending player to take the ball under the water when tackled. Now, I will say with 10.7, there's an important change that was done probably 3 or 4 years ago, where the scenario is quite common is you'll have a goalkeeper with their hand on the ball behind them. A player will go underwater and push the ball under, that used to be given as a penalty. But the determining factor then was the goalkeeper's not taking the ball under in that situation to prevent the defender taking it. They're just holding it. So in that situation, it would be a turnover, a contra foul. If the goalkeeper's got the ball under and the player comes up from the water and they notice and they drag the ball underwater away from that player, then they are trying to prevent that player from taking it. So it would be a penalty. So that's slightly different than what used to be done for about 30 years that I can remember. Next, please. So here's a new diagram. This has come about in the last probably 6 to 9 months. We've just taken that goal area and extended out to the 6 meters, so 2 meters of each side of the goal. If a goalkeeper, as the last defending player, commits any foul, including putting the ball under the water within his or her 6 meter area inside the dark blue area, it is considered a penalty foul. Outside the extended goal area, it is an exclusion foul. Okay, and that's pretty much the same with any foul. If the goalkeeper comes out and sinks the player, if they're within that area, penalty. If they're outside that area, exclusion. And ball under outside that extended area as well can be an ordinary foul if needed. That came straight from the slide, I think, didn't it, Steph, that I sent you?
Yep.
Yeah. It's very clear on that one.
Okay.
And more penalty fouls. Within the 6 meter area for a defending player to attempt to block or pass or shot with 2 hands. And within the 6 meter area for a defending player to play the ball with a clenched fist. Goalies can swing at the ball with a clenched fist. Field players cannot. I've seen numerous referees call penalties on goalkeepers for hitting the ball with a clenched fist, and they're wrong. And then I've had several argue with me that I didn't know the rule, so that's fine. 10.8 for a player or substitute who is not entitled under the rules to participate in the play at the time to enter the field of play. Also, the offending player shall be excluded from the remainder of the game with substitution. So that is someone who's had 3 fouls, being given the red flag, gets out of the water, gets back in the exclusion box, and then comes in. That sort of scenario for that. For the coach or any team official of the team not in possession of the ball to request a timeout, no personal foul shall be recorded for this offence. And this is quite common. It's not so bad when there's no electronic timing system or no air horn. But even if a assistant coach sits on an air horn and they don't have possession, tough luck. It doesn't have to be an intentional timeout. They've blown the horn, tough luck. You've called it at the wrong time, your issue. For the coach or any team official or player to take any action with intent to prevent a probable goal or to delay the game, including a defending player deliberately throwing the ball away before the attacking team can take a free throw. So I don't recall ever seeing a coach or a team official doing something that might prevent a probable goal. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I don't recall ever seeing it. And a defending player after a free throw outside the 6 meter line deliberately pushing the ball inside 6 meter line to avoid a direct shot. So these have come about in the last 2 or 3 years. Throwing the ball away is different than pushing the ball away. So if I foul Gail and I then pick up the ball and throw it somewhere, that is a penalty. If I push it in the action of fouling her away, that is entirely different. What the foul is doing here is killing the attack. And this happened to Australia in the 2015 World Champs in Kazan, where we were down by 1. We got a foul outside the 6 for a shot. The defending player picked it up and threw it down the far end of the pool. So therefore, we couldn't have our 6 meter shot. And that's why this has come in. And no personal foul shall be recorded for this offence by the coach or any team official. It just goes down in the card as the colour, the time, and a P without the number or coach or whatever. 10.11 for a defending player to impede an attacking player from behind within the 6 meter area when the attacking player is facing the goal and making a shooting action, unless the defending player makes contact only with the ball. If the defending player's foul player's foul described in this rule prevents the attacking player from scoring, a penalty must also be called. The referee must delay the call of penalty until the shot or attempted shot is completed and must award a penalty unless the attacking player scores. So the first part of this occurred 2018, where now you can hold the ball, whereas they brought this in because quite often a centre forward would work really hard, work all the way around to be facing the goal, and then nothing would be called because they were holding the ball. So this was decided that it was to try and reward all that effort. Defending players are getting better at only making contact with the ball, but you just got to make sure it's clear that they are intentionally only touching the ball. They can't have a hand on their back and grabbing the ball from the front at the same time. That's still a penalty. And again, you can delay it because we want the natural goal. If there's a natural goal scored, you don't have to call it. It's nothing written on the card.
Mark, you have your
Yep.
hand up?
Yeah, touching the ball. I mean, if they're picking the ball up and they're shooting and they've got the hand on the ball, if you touch the hand too, does that mean
Yes.
you have it? Is that still
Yes.
a penalty?
Yeah, any contact with the player, the attacking player, their body, their hand, their head, anything is a penalty.
Okay.
You've actually, the way this has been happening is the defenders have been trying to get in front, their hand in front of the ball to grab the ball.
Yeah.
And it's very clear when they can do it successfully. But most of the time, inexperienced players are still grabbing to try and do that. And it's not as obvious.
One thing I think as well that's come out of this is there's been new rules and an evolution of the penalty rule over recent years. It doesn't mean the existing quote unquote old rules have been removed from the rule book. You can still award a penalty in the old way. It's just the new evolution of the rules that we need to now consider when we're awarding penalties as well.
Yeah. Because a lot of referees are forgetting about all the other rules with a penalty, and that causes problems in itself. Next, please. This is I sent Steph the roughest sketch I was trying to show with this one as well. So what I'm trying to show here is the attacking player blew the head and the ball is inside the 6. They're grabbed by the defender on the foot, say 6.5 meters. Sorry. Because the attacking player's head and the ball is inside the 6, even though the player is grabbed outside the 6, they can't shoot because of where the ball is. So in this situation, it's a penalty. Okay, I called one in National League and no one believed I was right. So I actually got confirmed with the president of World Water Polo Referees that this was correct. Okay, so again, it's the positioning of the head and the ball. Because it's inside the 6, they can't shoot, even though their foot is grabbed outside the 6. So therefore, it's a penalty. If the ball and the head is outside the 6 and they're grabbed, clearly it's an exclusion. But in this situation, because quite often a defender will grab really quickly to stop the penalty throw from getting inside, this one is a penalty. And it happens more than you expect it to. And you've got to be consistent on it, and all the referees have to be doing it the same way. Not the best sketch in the world, but it's a lot better than Steph's done on the slide than I did on my paper. Okay, 10.12. If in the last minute of the game a penalty throw is awarded to a team, the coach may elect to maintain possession of the ball or be awarded a free throw. The timekeeper recording possession time shall reset the clock to 30 seconds and the game will be restarted as after a timeout. It is the responsibility of the coach to give a clear signal without delay if the team wishes to maintain possession of the ball in accordance with this rule. Now, I can almost guarantee you that the only coaches that will know about this are those on this call that actually referee as well. Most coaches don't know this. And if you turn to a coach and say, do you want possession or do you want to throw? Most of them don't know what you're talking about. Make them take the throw. Okay? So if they ask for maintain possession, the free throw is awarded at halfway. Okay? If it's a penalty throw, the same thing's done at that time. This was brought in because teams would give away several penalty throws in the last minute because they were hoping their goalkeeper would save it if there's a 1-goal game and then they have a counter-attack. This way, the attacking team gets to choose. But most coaches don't know this. Even in National League, none of them have a clue. And it's also important that you're aware that you are in actually the last minute of the game when this is done. And we have some videos. I've watched about 10 hours of game footage in the last few days, and I couldn't find many scenarios that were actually appropriate for kids' games. So we're going to go with the standard FINA Cloud stuff. So Steph will play that again. As you can see from the bottom commentary on the screen, it's not a correct penalty. Okay.
Watching this play here.
Yeah.
Watching the blue number 5.
Right. And because he gets in front, it's not a penalty. Now, this was actually done just after the rule had become a rule. So referees were getting it wrong. This one is clearly correct. Front order, grab before the ball gets there, instant penalty. Now, some would argue that the attacking player is not facing the goal in that situation, so you probably shouldn't call it a penalty. However, in that situation, I would call it a penalty. If they're holding the ball to get the shot off in the penalty, they must be facing the goal. In this situation, this is the old rules or the existing rules where they've been interfered with before they get the ball, so it is a penalty. And again, front order, defenders behind, grabbing on the shoulder before the ball's arrived, penalty again. Maybe Steph will play that again.
Yep.
Actually a good pass too, which helps. So this is slightly changed. Okay, this is before the goal area came about. And they're saying they're outside the goalpost. If you can play it again, Steph.
Yeah. Tell me if you want me to pause it.
Right there. For me, they're still wide. The defender's there. I still would not call a penalty in that situation. They're not heading towards the goal. There's a defender on the inside as well. I don't think that's a penalty in that situation. Thank you. Now that wasn't called. There's too much contact to let that go. I don't think there's any advantage in not calling it. Now, under the new rule, she was definitely holding the ball when the first contact happened. So therefore, it would have been a penalty in that situation. You can delay it, and then the second one, they've lost possession of it, and you would call a penalty. Yeah, and that I agree with that one. That should not a penalty in the first move because she's pretending, and then the second one is a penalty, which wasn't called. And we got one from the kids' games that I could actually watch some of my 10 hours of footage. So that player is clearly not trying to play at the ball. Definitely a penalty in that situation.
Just watch up here. The player drives in and 2 blue players jump on top.
Now, we probably covered it at the beginning of these sessions, but quite often when I've been an evaluator or a delegate and I say to a referee, why did you not award a penalty? Then I get, oh, I was playing advantage, I was doing this. Okay, fair enough. But if you're not awarding a penalty, and it should be, that's not playing advantage. Okay. So now the rules allow us to delay calling that penalty to give them the advantage. So that's the answer I want to see. I didn't call it in the first instance, and then I gave the penalty. Okay. Not awarding a penalty is not playing advantage most of the time. Okay. And they need to be called, because you can penalty situations. And the other thing with this is coaches will always yell and say they wanted a penalty, but they're 25 meters away. They wouldn't know what day it was half the time. So don't engage in with the coaches as well. That was a pretty easy one tonight.
That
Until
was.
Gail has 50 questions.
You're first on the list, Gail, obviously on the panel.
Yeah, she is.
Now we did go through that quite quickly. Penalties, I think, are a little bit more black and white, I think, than exclusions, because there are so many scenarios for exclusions, as we saw last week with, I think it was 25 slides or something. Penalties are pretty straightforward. Obviously, like I said, the evolution of the rules, which means we now have to consider more before awarding or not awarding a penalty. It's still pretty clear cut. I don't know, from my experience, and those that are, reffing in that as well, feel free to tell me that you're wrong. The playing advantage rule for penalties, for me, I have found as a referee to actually be easier to then call penalties, because you are allowing that natural movement. You're allowing for that natural goal to probably happen. And then when it does, it eventuates and it's a goal, and no one's angry at you either, because the goal's happened and you're clearly playing advantage. Whereas before that advantage rule was in, you didn't really have that to fall back on. You had to call it then and there in that instance. Gail, Libby, I can see you guys on the call. Would you agree, disagree in your experience in the last 12 months with regards to that and the new rules being brought in? Well, I should say 9 months, really.
Yeah, it's taking some time, took some time to get my head around it first, but the more I practiced, it was, yeah, it's good. I liked letting it play a little bit longer, and then bringing it back for a penalty if it's, needed.
I find the one where they get just inside the 6 metre, as Andrew was explaining, and it can be the head, the arm in there, and they get hit there. But if it's a one-on-one, I like to try and see it go a bit further, try and remember to hold my arm up to show I'm playing the advantage. But if there's no advantage, definitely call it. Andrew, as always, when we get the amended rules come through after the Olympics, it's always interesting to see how the coaches work together to try and see how they're going to get around these rules. And I think the most obvious one with this, with the amended penalty where you come in and they get you from behind on the body, was that the girls were tending to reach around from behind, grab the swimmers on the front of the attacking player, pull themselves around and block them that way. Yeah. So there was some discussion about that, and once you saw it being played and realised that was happening, to me, it's maybe not the penalty, but it's definitely going to be an exclusion on that player reaching around, grabbing in the front, because you're impeding as well as illegally blocking it. Yeah. Would you see it that way?
As long as they're not holding the ball, yeah. And that's the key in that situation, which makes it even harder because they are holding the ball, and it's the one rule where we say they're holding the ball, you can call something, which, makes our job harder and harder, which World Aquatics seem to like us doing, is making us work harder and think more.
The other one that you're talking about with the goalkeeper going out and fouling a player. So if the ball's out wide
Yep.
and it's a contestable ball, the goalkeeper goes out, the goalkeeper inadvertently fouls the player, but in the meantime, another defender has come back and basically they are then the next line of defence. Would you
Yes.
still call the penalty or would you call the exclusion?
I'd call it exclusion because there's a player behind.
So I think we just need to make that clear to everyone listening in that even though it's inside the 6 metre and the goalkeeper's gone out, it's not necessarily a penalty if there are other defenders in there. We've got to make
Yeah.
sure that's clear.
And that's where the probable goal thing comes down, and people forget about the other defenders, and they've got to be directly between where the goalie is and the goal. They can't be off to the side saying I'm still here. They've got to be there to actually put an arm up and block a shot or something. I think the important thing with the penalties, as Steph touched on before, is we forget the rules, and I try not to use the word new rules because they've been in since January. They are the rules, but we forget all the rules and just apply those that are most convenient, most fresh in our memory. It happens at national championships where we have a meeting and we discuss a lot of things, and the last thing they'll say is the one thing that every referee focuses on and get right, and then they forget everything else. And that's where we fall down as referees. We need to know what all the penalty foul rules are and apply them correctly. And the same with all the exclusion rules, and not just the last one we were talking about or thinking about. So you can give away a penalty when they're not holding the ball. It's still there, it's still written down, and then we can give a penalty if they are holding the ball in that certain circumstances.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of players have focused more on that extension of the penalty, the extension of that rule, thinking that's all it is now. But it's so true. They never actually changed the original 5 metre rule.
No.
So it still applies, whether you've got the ball or you haven't got the ball, you've got front water and someone gets you from behind.
Yeah, exactly.
I will just take it back with just what, Gail, you were talking about with the goalkeeper coming back, just to explain it a little bit more. So I'm going to set a bit of an example, a scenario, and Andrew, please jump in if I'm getting a nuance of this incorrect. A play has transpired, a goalkeeper has saved a ball, flicked it out, blocked it off to the side, it stayed in the field of play, it's floated 3 or 4 meters outside of the goalpost. The goalkeeper's the first one there to get it. They now have the ball and they are looking to pass it back up to their team, who is now in the attacking position. A player from the opposition comes in and does a ball under. Okay, they cause a traditional ball under, not making the not having the goalkeeper actually contest and take the ball under themselves to take it away from that player. That's not a penalty.
No.
That is an ordinary foul, and that is what we talked about, I think it was in session 2, contra foul. So the reason being, it's not a probable goal. Okay, the attacking player has done an ordinary foul under the rules of a ball under, and as Andrew said, Mr. Cameron says it's a ball under. It's not a penalty. And I know a lot of coaches will jump up and down and say, but that's a penalty, the goalie took it under. Yeah, but they didn't scoop it under. They didn't take it away from a player. They didn't take it under the water themselves to stop another player from getting their hands on it. They've sat there, their hand is there, and a ball under has transpired. That is a contra foul. And it's one of the ones in recent years, that, the more that I know I've been refereeing higher graded games, that coaches and players arc up about the most. There is a shift that we're calling it more consistently. I know in New South Wales and particularly in Sydney, it is being called more consistently. So people are starting to be aware of this old rule that has been around for eons, of what it actually is, and actually understanding the nuances of it. So that's a really big one, because everyone thinks anything the goalie does to take the ball away is a penalty. You know, any foul the goalkeeper makes is a penalty. It's not the case. Does anyone have questions? I just want to make sure I've explained that clear enough, and that makes sense for everybody, because I know when it was first explained to me, it really wasn't explained clearly until I then gave myself a real-time scenario with that. No? Good. Awesome. That's what we love. Were there any other questions that anybody had on penalty fouls for tonight? No. Nice, quick one. I thought this would be the longest one for sure. Alrighty. Well, if there's no questions, I might wrap it up for tonight's session. So thank you all for jumping on. Like I said, I will send out a note with regards to session number 6, which is next week. It's our last one, which I'm really excited about, and I'm excited that we've all jumped on every week to do this as well. It's like I said the other week, it's actually been it's been really enjoyable seeing everyone every week and going through all this stuff and trying to send a consistent message across the refereeing cohort in New South Wales and Queensland with Sharon. So like I said, next week is session 6. What we will be doing is we're going to go through a bit of a summary of all the sessions at the end. We're going to talk about managing the bench, how to manage coaches, how to manage managers, how to manage players, and using those special red and yellow cards you keep in your pocket. And again, the rare 1%ers. So have a think between now and Wednesday. If you've come across any really odd scenarios that you just didn't know how to handle, or you called what you thought and then went, should I have called that? So have a think, email them through to me so that we can put them up in the session, and then we'll give us a chance to actually answer them, have the answer for you, and then we'll go from there. I do have a question here from Coda. If a player has the ball in the 6 metre, but they are far off to the left, so much so that it would almost not be possible to make a shot, and there are multiple players blocking in front of the goal, but the shot and a foul, do you still give the penalty? No.
The
So-
simplistic way to look at it, Coda, is that a probable goal situation? So realistically, there's several defenders in front of them. They're way off to the side. Now, a shooter will think they can score from there. A goalkeeper say they can't, and there's defenders in the middle. So you got to look at the probability of it. You could also look at the age group that you're doing. If you're doing under 14s or 16s, they're going to struggle. Seniors may have a chance, but even then, they're so far away, I wouldn't call it. For that, I don't think that's a probable goal situation for me.
Mhm.
And then someone will probably score from there, but then, that's life.
Yep.
It's too late then. Just as you call that, ignore it, the ball will go in and then you look like an idiot. So, yeah.
I think the key thing in that as well is it's not one on none. You've mentioned there were multiple players blocking in front of the goal. It's not a penalty. Foul or exclusion, depending on the severity of what transpires, I'd imagine. But definitely not a penalty if there's people in front of the goal and in front. Wonderful. Any other questions this evening? No. Alrighty. Well, again, I will say thank you to everyone that's come on tonight. I will get this recording up on the website, onto the webpage, so that you can watch it back, and if you want to share it around to anybody. And again, if there are any questions in the meantime about anything that we talk about, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to Taylor as well, so we can come back to you. Sometimes it warrants a quick phone call, because sometimes we can just call you back and it's easier, or put it in writing, either way, and we'll go from there. But thank you again. I'm going to stop the recording now.